This podcast is for the limited purpose of recruiting individuals to become financial advisors. It is not intended and should not be considered as an offer of securities products or advisory services by Park Avenue Securities, LLC, or any of its affiliates or representatives.
Welcome to Become a Financial Advisor podcast with Mike Salvatore from Northeast Financial Network. Our podcast helps people who are looking for new challenges in a new career. If you are ready to explore an exciting career in financial services, this is the place to start.
Hello and welcome to Become a Financial Advisor with Mike Salvatore from Northeast Financial Network. Today in studio we have a special guest, and that is Chris Dapolito. Good morning, gentlemen. How are you?
Doing great, Eric. How are you?
Fantastic. Chris, thanks for being here, man.
Oh, thanks for having me, Eric. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear what this conversation is going to be today. I'm going to sit back and learn from you guys. Chris, I know that you work with Mike. And Mike, I just need to know, why'd you bring him into the show today?
Well, thanks again, Eric. Chris is an integral part of our career development team. He is our managing associate. We refer to him in our firm as the coach. Based on Chris's experiences, his unique abilities, he brings a lot to the table in terms of developing our advisors. So, today I'd like Chris to share with the audience his background and some of the things that he brings to the table. So, Chris, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. Well, I think what Mike was referring to is, prior to this industry, I was involved in coaching college football. And so I started off as a collegiate player. I was a quarterback at Duke University. And after my playing career in college, I still wanted to play a little bit. So I found some opportunities in Europe where I became a player coach. Coming back stateside is where I really wanted to dive into the coaching world. And that's where I became an assistant coach initially at Pace University, went on to become the head coach for a number of years. And through that experience, we're really trying to bring some of those parallels to Northeast Financial Network and the different experience I learned from coaching, from managing players, coaches, how we developed them, how we got them to be successful on and off the field. If we can find those parallels here in our office and apply those to our newer advisors, we're really starting to see some success from there. It's been a lot of fun.
That's great. Thank you, Chris. Chris, I know the story about how you got into this business. I'd like for you to share with the audience, from your perspective, what was it like looking from the outside in at our business and the decision to, jump in and become an advisor and now go into a leadership role? Can you tell us about that a little bit?
I think we got to start off and disclose that we're first cousins. So
okay.
We've known each other our whole lives. And, I was coaching football for a while. And then I was also in medical device sales, specifically selling spine implants down in Florida. And I learned two things, really. So when you're coaching, you are coaching 15 hours a day, 4 months out of the year during the season. When you're not in season, you're traveling around the country and you're recruiting and you're moving your family all over the place, depending on how successful you are. You get fired several times in that world. And when I got fired, I decided to get into sales. And that's when I went down to Florida, sold spine implants. And another light went off. I was chasing surgeons around. We're flying around trying to get, trays off of the airplanes to get them into sterilization. So it just didn't seem like an environment where I wanted to start a family and have a career for 30 plus years, really catering to these surgeons. So that's when I finally looked back on our relationship and have seen, all the times that we've sat down, we spoke, I came into the office about this career, and some of the things really started to, make sense. That this is the type of career where you can build it the way you want to build it. And whether that means you work your tail off 24 hours a day, or you work smartly and build your practice in a very efficient way and with the people you want to do that. And so I thought, just for my own personal goals of starting a family, this made a lot of sense. This is the right timing in my life to take a deeper dive into this industry. And that's when I called you up. I was living in Orlando, and I said, I really want to learn more about what you're doing, because it's sometimes it's confusing, to be honest with you.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I think looking from the outside in at our industry, because of what people see in the media or any experiences that they have had, and we briefly touched on this on a previous podcast, they might have a perception that may not necessarily be true about the career. One thing we talked about, Chris, on a previous podcast was our internal philosophy here at the Northeast Financial Network regarding we take an attitude that we want to coach our advisors, not manage them. And it's a very distinct difference between a manager and a coach. And the coach is, rolls up the sleeves, gets in there. Chris being that player coach and having that mentality, I think is what creates a true leadership. And to me, leadership is the ability to create voluntary followers, and people will follow you if they know you're in the trenches and you're doing that on a day-to-day basis. So Chris, if you could share with us a little bit about, your start as an advisor, your path to leadership, but then how could somebody listening possibly take that type of path?
Well, before we get there, Mike, what did you see in me? Why did you want me to come into the business?
It's a great question. And I'll share with the audience here. I was chasing Chris probably for 5 or 6 years. I think that the qualities, we've known each other our whole lives. So I knew he was an extremely hard worker, which is first and foremost in our business. I knew he was highly ethical, right? So that's a given if you're going to come into any type of career like this, but the experience that he had and the success that he had as a player, through college, through professionally in Europe, and then as a coach, and then in medical device sales, everything he's done, he's excelled at. And in my mind, when I'm looking for somebody to bring into our organization, it's you have to find winners, right? And winners always find a way to win. And I've always seen that in Chris, his drive, work ethic, his competitiveness. So, I really was after him for 5 years. He pushed back a little bit, I think, because it really took some time for you to understand, right, what we really do and how we can actually bring value to the people that we work with and be rewarded for bringing that value. And it seems to have turned out okay.
Absolutely. And I think that's a good point, though. I mean, you really took the fact that you took your time, you explained the industry, you had a vested interest in my success professionally, and that stood out to me. You know what I mean? And I think that's important. And we try to bring those same values to when we recruit people now, is to really get to know them, understand what makes them tick, and decide as two professional individuals, is this the right profession for you? Because sometimes it's not. And we would like to be very transparent about that. And you get to know people over this, over dinner, over lunch, you get to know their families, you get to really know what their goals are. And it's a really fun process. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer than we all want to, but it's so transparent and it's so organic. When they come into the culture, it's an immediate fit. So it is really nice. So Mike, I just, I'd like to thank you for the time you took to bring me in here.
Thank you. No, it's true. And I appreciate you saying that. I think that culturally in our firm, the human side to the business, we're in a people business. We do take the time to get to know individuals, get to know their families, figure out what makes them tick, and really what they want to accomplish. And as a leadership team, we want to, we're rowing the boat the same way, and we want them to achieve their goals personally and professionally, which is very, very important to us, that they have that balance in their life. And I think your point of the vested interests, yes, we're family. We've known each other our entire lives. Everybody comes into our firm and has that big brother, big sister type of approach with a mentor, which I think is great. There's somebody that is assigned to them, that takes a vested interest in them, that gets to know them on a personal level, and really wants to just do everything they possibly can to make sure that person has every chance to be as successful as they want to be in this business. How does somebody get started in this career or make that change to this career? Because you have that unique background, right? Where you graduated college, you had some great life experiences. One thing you didn't share is that Chris was actually in a few movies. So he had a little bit of a movie career and some acting. So you've done it. You tried a number of things, right? Professional sports, acting, medical device sales, so it's a big shift to come into a business like ours. What does it take? What did you expect? And what are some of the things that we do here that made that transition possible for you?
So the daunting aspect of coming into this career was not having a background in finance. And yes, I had a lot of life experiences, have a great network of people and friends and family all over the country. But I'm not known as a financial advisor initially. I wasn't known as a financial advisor initially. And I know that there's a lot of exams you have to take, a lot of different licensing. And so that was scary. So part of that, understanding the progression of how you get yourself licensed and how you build a career as a team member with senior advisors, really made me see the light, say, okay, you don't have to bite off, a huge piece of meat off the bone here. You can take it one step at a time and still build your career, still be successful. So that was huge. So I think that's why it's so key during the process of interviewing, is to understanding what we do, because everybody has their own definition of all the different titles that is in personal finance. So that was
great.
a big piece of it. And then you have to have the right blend of coaching and mentorship when you get into the business. You want to start fast. You have to see the game plan and playbook to do that. You have to have the right people above you that you respect, that are showing you how it's done, because they've done it, they've been there, and they've developed people along the way. That all mixed together is really what makes our firm successful, and that's why we're growing.
You mentioned something that I think is a key point. There's a lot of people that may be listening and they're going to go, yeah, I'm not a finance type of person, or economics, or a salesperson. And I always tell everybody that's probably the number one thing that pops into your mind, either consciously or subconsciously, that's a hurdle or a fear that you may have looking at a business like ours. I always tell everybody, we're in a people business. It's a relationship business first. We're not in sales. We're not in the financial planning business. We're more in a marketing, branding, people business. It's all about building relationships and trying to, read people and deliver value to them, and help them get what they want. And, most people want to be guided properly. And, if you have that genuine side to you and you care about people and you have the ability to build networks and approach those are people that are very successful with us. So
100%.
Thank you.
100%. It's about your ability to get in front of people, to get them to trust you and believe in you, and then simply being there for them to help them when they have a need in finance.
Some of the other things that come to mind, Chris, the career development team that we've built here, and you're a big part of, obviously, on the coaching of our new advisors, and the interview and the selection process. Some of the support that we put around, the infrastructure and support that we feel is needed and that we provide for people to become successful. Can you talk a little bit about that and some of the key things in terms of a new person's development?
Sure. I think it all starts with the Living Balance Sheet. That's our proprietary software program that we use to do everything from capturing your client's information to running the calculations on the different calculators to even presenting. And so what that's going to do is really teach you a process, give you all the tools that you need in your toolbox to break out when needed for your different clients. And the training we have behind that includes the language behind that, having nice polished up language, and the ability to deliver a nice presentation that your clients understand, that you understand, and that is palpable. So that's huge for us. We know that that's a big part in our firm. It's forever growing, and it's a living program. And so we train on it, whether it's here in the office, at home, online, or at the different forums that they have throughout the year, throughout the country. So that's number one. And then I think the other support in this office that's huge is things like Wildman, where they're teaching you how to get involved in the different markets that you're interested in. It's so much better in this career when you have identified 4 to 6 markets that you really identify with, that you want to get involved in, whether it's a certain industry, a certain career, you have a spouse that's an attorney, you want to be involved in attorneys, or you're just really interested in IT professionals for whatever reason. So developing a game plan behind that, giving you language and a whole track to run on how to become an expert. So you can talk their lingo, get to know these people and really the influencers in these spaces, and become a financial resource to those different markets. And then on top of that, it's really just the people in this office that want to see you succeed. And whether that's holding your hand and making phone calls, or being there when you have not the greatest week, or really pushing you to the next level because you've hit some or crossed some great hurdles, and you made a Leaders Club and you want to get to the next level. Well, how do you do that? That's all in place here.
That's great. Thank you again, Chris. Yeah, I think that our infrastructure is really unique to the industry. And, one other thing to add to that, Chris, is our mindset development. I think that, in any new business, anybody making a career change, the biggest, hurdle that they have is typically created in their own minds. And we have an in-house coach that, focuses on mindset development. And that's Patty Conforti, who you'll meet on a future podcast. And that's something that we, stress, from day one. It's the right positive focus on, developing yourself professionally and personally, somebody to talk to when you have the ups and the downs, keep it on that path. So that's a, big part of our support infrastructure on a career development team as well. And Chris, you mentioned Weilman, just so the audience knows, Richard Weilman has created the Weilman marketing system. That's something we subscribe to. It's an outside vendor that is a marketing track that we invest in for all of our new advisors to help them build, out their targeted markets. And
Mike, how did we get someone like Patty Conforti into the office? Why was that so important? And how did it really get established here?
That's a great question. So my mentor was Al Farrar, who was the founder of our firm 55 years ago. And he was very big in terms of mindset development and a system called concept therapy, and was just a student of psychology for all his years in the business, and that just became a big part of our culture. And Patty, believe it or not, we do have a lot of family in the business, is Al's daughter. After Al's passing a few years ago, Al was a big part of our coaching in the office, for a number of years after his retirement in terms of one-on-one coaching and classrooms. Patty has taken that role to be our in-house, mindset development coach. And she's just tremendous. And for us, it was, we call her our secret weapon. You're not going to get that anywhere, to my knowledge, in the industry. I joke around all the time, it's kind of like Billions, the TV show, and they have the in-house psychologist. We're not as extreme as Billions, but there's ups and downs. Sometimes you need somebody to talk to, or just in general, somebody to help you to understand in this business, how do you manage your emotions? There's a lot of things that go through your head. And to us, that's key. And it's not just on a professional level, it's on a personal level, because every decision you make, right, in your business life is going to have a personal effect as well. And it's very important to us that, people are leaving here, going home, and, turning it off and really just spending the quality time with their families that they need to have, and not, bring any baggage home with them. So that's a big part of our culture. Also, I think in terms of training development, something we talk about all the time is the difference between the art and the science of the business. And again, I think the perception of the audience in some cases may be that it's all science. It's very product and tax law and estate law and financial driven. Whereas when we train a new advisor, we really focus on the first 6 months to 12 months as they're learning the science, which is obviously needed. They need to learn the art of the business, which is how to create a business development plan, how to create a marketing plan, how to create balance and a schedule in their life. So all the baseline, the foundation to a successful career is all really coached up front for a new advisor. So
yeah, I mean, nobody goes from 0 to 100 miles an hour. We all started from the same place, and you have to learn good habits from the beginning. You have to learn the basics, the 101 in personal finance, and then build on that. Thankfully, we have all the experts here in the office, so that when you do have the questions and in the scenarios that you're not fully read up on, you can easily lean on them, whether it's just speak to the specialist in the office beforehand or bring them into the meeting. So right. Until you close that gap of knowledge over many years, because there's a ton of knowledge to absorb in this industry.
We're always learning in this industry.
Always learning.
Forever changing, and that's something that's very, very important as you develop in your career. So, Chris, this industry, it's huge. There's a lot of products, a lot of services. There's a lot of noise. It could sometimes be a bit overwhelming for a new advisor in the business. And when they're learning about all this, and they're new to their career and they're trying to build their client base, it's like drinking from a fire hose. So what we've done here is we created a track to success for them. We call it our playbook. Can you talk a little bit about the playbook and how that's used, and how important it is that a new advisor knows what they're doing pretty much every hour of every day, especially for the first 6 months?
Absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head. The playbook is so important to our success because it really lays out on paper what to do on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis for those first 3 months. And it's so important in developing the right habits to become a successful advisor. Everything from the language you need to learn, the systems you need to learn, to how to build out your calendar so that every hour in your day is efficient and you're constantly moving forward. And we all know there's a lot to learn in this industry, and to try and learn it all up front before you build your business is just not going to happen. So we found from our experience over the 55 years being here, taking into account all the successes and failures we've had, this is the best way. This is the best track to run on in your first 3 months. And that's what I think is so exciting that we're doing here in this office, and we're doing it on a daily basis. And I even see some of the older advisors going back and taking bits and pieces from the playbook out and getting back on track. So it's really, it's been a great thing.
That's a great point. You see how it has had an impact on our culture, our environment. Our newer associates are off to a much faster start. They're much more productive. You see some more seasoned, mid-level or very experienced advisors asking some questions about, hey, what's this playbook? What's in it? And they're integrating some of the systems into their practice, and it's helping enhance some of the things they're doing. So it's just been a great tool for us, and it's something it's forever evolving. And we found that to be one of our key, points to a new person's success. So Chris, when I came into the business, which I'm a little bit older than you, it was a very different business in terms of developing your clientele. And, the phone was our main tool, and networking events, those types of things. So some of those things have not changed, but a big thing that I think is a huge strategic advantage is social media. So nowadays, I'm always shocked. I can go back. I just had a conversation last week with somebody I haven't spoken to in over 20 years that I played college football with. And it was like, we spoke last week, so it's so easy to reconnect with people. And that's probably one of the most important things in our business is building out your network and those people that know you and the type of person that you are. So can you talk a little bit about social media, how that plays a role in an advisor's career?
Well, certainly a major role, because everybody's on social media today. So you have access to a number of people around the country, around the world. But the key is having a plan behind it, and it's funny. You mentioned that when you got started, you were doing a lot of stuff on the phone. Over the last few years with social media, people have gotten away from the phones, but I think we're at the point now, you can even get back on the phone, make some cold calls, because people just aren't receiving them anymore. They're getting more messages in their spam and all that. But as far as developing your career, one of your markets should definitely be an online social media campaign. And whether that's targeting a specific niche market or just reconnecting with people in your world. And what you have to do is you have to put out content, right? It's all about the content that you put out. If you look at things like e-commerce, what they're doing online, and these life coaches, it's all marketing, right? You're seeing Gary Vaynerchuk and all these people put out videos and different short clips, and it's all content just to stay in front of people. And I think to get it, us as advisors, we got to do the same thing. We got to be in front of people through content, whether it's weekly, monthly, and then having your systems in place of reaching out to them on a personal level and seeing if you can be there to help them.
No, that's great. That's great. Yeah, I mentioned earlier that this is a people business. It's a relationship business. And I look at social media, and it took me a while to get adapted to it. But this next generation, that's everything they do is on social media, and it gives you access to so many people, so many potential clients you can help. And I think that, again, I said it earlier about being in the people business, you have to build a social brand. And if you're branding and marketing yourself and delivering that message of some of the different services you can offer and the value that you can bring, it's just going to attract conversations. It's really what we want to do for our new associates, which is tremendous.
I think so. And I think when it comes to social media, we have to get out of that 1990s financial advisor mindset of what we do and how comprehensive planning is what you need, and bring a human aspect to it. Right. So you talked about rebranding, and your social media brand has to show who you are as a person, your human side. And that's how you connect with people. And I think that's where we're going. And that's what I think the successful people on social media are doing. So I think we should do the same. Tell your story, who you are, and connect with people on that emotional side.
Absolutely. No, that's dead on. I think that, people by people, and if there's a connection and a trust developed, that's what we do. And that's the most important part of what we do is, delivering to our potential clients and our clients. So that's great, Chris. Thank you. And just a couple of other systems. You touched on the living balance sheet, which is really, we're going to have a whole segment on that coming up with James DiMatteo and how that impacts our clients and why that's different in terms of, what society sees is traditional financial planning, and we look at things a little bit differently. And we're going to have a whole segment on that in the future. But in terms of other marketing strategies, some of the systems that we put in place, Market Edge 360, My Name Flow, can you talk about that? How a new advisor can benefit from that a little bit?
I think it goes back to what I would say before. It's just content. How can you put out content to stay in front of people that's relevant content, that's humanized content, so that at some point, at the right time, when the timing is right for them, when they have a need, you're going to be that person that they think of. That's what it's all about. That's why we do this. So we have the different systems of providing content on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis that's relevant to our industry and also speaks to the different markets that you would potentially be going after.
I want to shift gears a little bit back to the coaching model, because that's something that's very important to us. We want our people to be successful. We want to push them. We want to coach them, So, I think it would be good. You have a story about when you were at Rutgers. You started at Rutgers prior to Duke, and you're a quarterback. And, tell us some of the things you learned there of what coaching really means.
Before I answer that question, Mike, you were once an athlete yourself.
I was not as highly touted as you, but I was a bit of an athlete. Yes.
Who was your favorite coach in high school? You played high school football. Who's your favorite coach?
So that would have to be Sam Turner, my offensive line coach.
And what do you remember? What made him your favorite coach?
I think the guy really, as tough as he was, really cared. He rolled up his sleeves. He was in a weight room with you. He wanted to see you be successful. He pushed you to be the best you can be. I remember when I was deciding, where to go to school, if I wanted to play college football or not. And he was a guy that dragged me into an office. I thought I was going to get in trouble, sat me down. I missed the first half of class, and he just started dialing college coaches to tell them what a great kid I was and how I'd be a great addition to the team. And he's a guy that he cared, and I knew he cared. And that's, I think, to me, one of the biggest things that somebody can feel with a coach. If it's a genuine, hey, I care about you, I want to see you be as good as you can be. So that's
I love important. I love it. And you said it, right? You said as tough as he was, he cared. And I think coaching, people sometimes associate it just with all the yelling, screaming, and motivation by fear tactics. But as much as you do that, you double the amount of love you give them and the amount of care that you give them. And that's really what's coaching, right? Because coaching it changes. It's not black and white. You can't just say, do this, do that, do this, and it's going to happen. People have emotions. They have good days. They have bad days. There's injuries. There's all kinds of things that happen. So you have to be able to pivot from that and understand who they are, but ultimately push them outside of their comfort zone so that they have the type of success that you see in them initially when you're recruiting them. So I know what you were referencing before. My time at Rutgers, one of the great things as a player is the perfect scenario, right? Is having an older senior player showing you how it's done. So I got to Rutgers. I was a freshman. We had a senior quarterback, Mike McMahon, who wanted to play 7 years in the NFL. So there I am, redshirting, which means you don't play, but you get to practice and be at the games, watching this senior quarterback who's been through it for the last 4 years and do it at a very high level. So it's almost like an apprenticeship, and we have that same model here. You come in as a new advisor, and we have some of the biggest, most successful, heavy-hitting advisors here in our office. So you get to see them on a daily basis, how they get it done behind the scenes on a day-to-day basis. That's such a great learning experience, and you get to interact with these people, and you get to talk to the other advisors about how they're getting it done. So you have this great environment to share knowledge, talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, and how they're getting it done. Because, seeing a high-level advisor in year 15 and year 20, that's not how they were in year 1, right? You have to get to that point. So it really helps the new advisors see it done at a high level. And then we have all the support, guys like me, yourself, to say, hey, yes, they're operating at 100 miles an hour. You're starting out. This is what you need to be done. This is the playbook. We're going to get you up to that. We're going to get you ramped up to that level.
That's great. That's great. Let's talk about, you mentioned emotions and something we haven't talked about is motivation. I'm always a big believer that you can't teach that, right? You're either a motivated person or you're not. But what we can do is we can inspire them to point that motivation in the right direction. And that's something that, you and I talk about when we, do one-on-one coaching sessions with advisors. We get to know them. It's rare that somebody's not motivated that comes into this business, but they just don't know where to point it. So let's talk about how we can inspire some people from those coaching sessions to get the job done.
Well, we first got to find out who they are. What makes them tick? So when I sit down with people, whether it was when I was coaching or in this industry, you find out, are they goal oriented or process oriented, right? What really gets them motivated? If you tell me, book 10 meetings this week, that doesn't resonate with me. If you show me how to book 10 meetings this week, then I'm motivated to do it. So once we find out about that individual, what makes them tick, then how to get them going, how to get them motivated to take action, right? Whether it's through goals or through the process. And then from there, it's really just understanding their goals and understanding the consequences of them not reaching those goals, right? Because we're all adults, we're all professionals. We know what has to be done. As human beings, we don't always want to put our best foot forward, and that's where a coach can come in and crack the whip here and there, or just have a nice conversation and remind them, hey, this is what you're doing this for. Let's get back on track. So that's really that's the human side, and understanding people, how they tick, and wanting them to succeed, and seeing that, and coming from a really good energy place and saying, hey, let's get this done. That's where the coaching comes in. Right.
That's great. And Chris, just to, the point you made in terms of what makes them tick, are they process oriented versus goal driven? I think that that's one of the reasons why we've built out our career development team the way we have, and the playbook, because, there is that 1%, the 1%ers that, they're goal driven, they're maybe money driven. It's I want to hit X, and they'll just go, they're thoroughbreds. They'll run, 1,000 miles an hour, and they'll run through walls to do whatever it takes to figure it out along the way. But 99% of people need a lot of direction. They need a lot of process. They need a lot of day-to-day, coaching and hand-holding, which is something that we put together. And I think that's what's shifted the difference in terms of why we retain so many people, why they're highly successful early in their career, and they have long-term careers with us.
Yeah, I mean, look at Bill Belichick and the Patriots. They make their living, drafting second and third rounders and developing them into great football players. If you ever watch the Super Bowl, there's this great, statistic they put up, not statistic, but just little blip on the screen where they show all the starting lineups in the Super Bowl on both teams and which of those players were 5-star athletes at a high school.
Right.
And the majority are 2- and 3-star athletes, right? It's the development.
It's development, it's the systems.
Seeing the talent that they have, identifying, hey, they do bring something to the table, whether it's sales skills, relationship skills, or knowledge, and then developing and putting all those different skills together through our process and through our training to be successful. And that's where it's so fulfilling from a management standpoint to develop advisors and see them really succeed.
So Chris, in summary, one of the final things I wanted to ask you here was, how important has it been for you as you're building your own practice? How important has it been to be that player coach, because you are running your own practice and you're bringing that knowledge to the leadership side?
I think it's extremely important because I'm living it. And, I was a quarterback, and to be coached by a previous quarterback meant everything, because they knew what it felt like to drop back and have these gigantic dudes coming after you to rip your head off, right? And having to make these really important decisions to deliver the ball to the open guy when people are breathing down your neck. You just can't paint that picture unless you've lived it. And so that's what I'm doing. And whenever I sit down with any of the younger advisors, I am so open to them. I said, listen, I am doing the same exact things you're doing. I'm living this experience with you. And I have bad days, I have good days. This has been successful, this hasn't. And let's have this great discussion about it. And let's get you going. So the fact that I'm building it at the same time they're building it and have very similar goals as them of trying to get to those certain levels as an advisor, I think only builds the trust and respect that you need to have this kind of culture in our office.
That's terrific. And Chris, I just want to thank you first and foremost for your contributions to developing our new associates. It's been great to have you on the leadership team, and I just want to thank you for your time today and being part of this podcast. So
it's been a pleasure being here. Thanks for having me.
Hey guys, this was a great podcast. Just sitting here listening and learning. A couple points, a couple takeaways for me is, Chris, thank you so much for being open and sharing a lot of your history. I mean, from all the things that you've done, one thing really stood out, and that was selling spine implants in Florida. And that sounds like backbreaking work. I'm sorry. I had to. I couldn't avoid that.
That's a good one.
It's been bothering me the entire time. I'm just kidding. No, but here's the thing. The true point that I take away from this is at the end, you talked about running your own practice, right? And there's an old saying, those who can do, those who can't teach. I've always hated that because part of it's true, but part of it's not true. The beauty is those who can do, you're doing. And then those who are doing can also teach. And that's also what you're doing. So thank you for that, because as a coach myself, I can't tell you how important it is for somebody to get in the trenches with somebody who's in the trenches already and saying, let's do this together. Let's put our boots on one at a time. Let's lace them up tight and let's start marching. So way to go. Thank you so much. You are a great guest. Mike, thanks so much for bringing him on.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it.
Hey, you bet. And thank you all for listening to the Become a Financial Advisor podcast with Mike Salvatore from Northeast Financial Network. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. That way, when Mike comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with friends, family, and coworkers. Thanks again for listening today. For everyone at Northeast Financial Network, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Become a Financial Advisor podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available.
This podcast is for the limited purpose of recruiting individuals to become financial advisors. It is not intended and shall not be considered as an offer of securities products or advisory services by Park Avenue Securities, LLC, or any of its affiliates or representatives. In order for a Guardian financial representative to use the title of financial advisor or advisor, which are referenced in this podcast, that individual must be a licensed investment advisor representative or IAR. The licenses required to become an IAR are Series 6 or 7 and Series 65 or 66. Either a CFP, CHFC, CFA, or PFS designation may substitute for the Series 65 or 66. Neither Mike Salvatore nor Chris Dapolito, the speakers in this podcast, are licensed IARs and do not hold the financial advisor title.
Compliance number 2019-89729, expiry 11/21.